Morris is a level 4 archery coach. She teaches students of all ages as well as high-performance private lessons, instructor training, and equipment sales. Lucy owns New England School of Archery and Supplies, LLC, and is the host of the FlyingArcher.com. She is also a Coast Guard veteran. Let's give Coach Lucy a warm welcome.
Thank you. I'm very, very excited to be here today. This forum is a place for you as new archers to ask questions that you've never really thought about asking before or didn't really know how to approach a coach about. So let's start out with the first question. Yes, in the back.
I'm new to archery and I shoot right-handed. When I shoot the arrows, they consistently go to the left of where I want them to go. Why is that?
Well, as a new archer, there may be a couple things that are going on. And you said you're shooting right-handed?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. All right, so you might be actually closing your right eye. You want to make sure your right eye is open. That's the simplest thing. If you're shooting and both of your eyes are open and you find you might be actually using your left eye. So you want to do a test and find out, it's a very simple test, if you're left eye dominant. If you find out that you're left eye dominant, it's actually much better to shoot with like a lefty bow if you're left eye dominant and a right-handed bow if you're right eye dominant. Very good question. Thank you. Oh, I want to add to that. When I teach instructor training, usually about 120 and 130 instructors in June I work with. Usually about a third of them are what's called cross-eye dominant. They shoot with one hand, say they're right-handed, and they're left-eye dominant, or the opposite. So, yes?
When I was a kid, I kept hitting my arm. How do I stop doing this?
Oh, that hurts, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Well, first thing is you want to make sure you have an arm guard. I don't have one with me, but it's one of these things that can go on your arm. It velcros around and it protects your arm if the if the string were to hit it. So, another thing that that you probably should do is when your arm is out like this, you want to make sure that the crease is straight up and down. If I can take my arm and go in like this, then you know this crease will be straight up and down. That's, i.e., this is your bow hand, bow arm. It's the arm that's holding onto the bow. Another thing that might be happening is if your shoulder is coming in like this, you want to make sure your shoulder is down. If your shoulder's coming forward, you can have the strings just kind of go right across. So does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Over here, yes.
Yeah, I have just gotten a new recurve bow. It's heavier than the last one that I got, but the folks at the store said it fits me perfectly. Anyways, I'm shooting right-handed, and the arrow keeps coming off the arrow rest when I pull the string back just a little bit. It's one of those metal arrow rests that's just flat, and it has no little lip. So why is it doing that?
Does the arrow rest kind of look like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what is happening is this one does have a little lip to it, but the one that you have doesn't. Is that what you're doing is it's a heavier bow, so you're trying to pull it back, but you might be pulling off to the right a little bit. If you pull the string off to the right and the arrow is here, it's going to fall off to the left. So, how much weight did that increase? Did you get? You're not sure? Well, I would suggest that you probably go back to the store and get a bow and pull it back to your anchor and then bring it forward. If you can pull it back without, shaking or strain, then that's a bow that would fit you right now. And you can increase the weight later on. So, good question. Thank you. Yes?
What is better, a high anchor or under the jaw anchor? Because I don't like under the jaw anchor. Under the jaw archer, rather, and my coach is making me do it.
You don't like under the jaw. It's when you have your anchor, your hand comes down here. How much shooting have you done? Oh, I think when we talked, you said you maybe had a couple hours of
Correct.
lessons. Yeah. Well, for beginner students, what I recommend is to have the anchor in which your finger comes to your smile, your thumb is under your jaw, so you're like this. It's very simple. So when you pull back the string, you come back, you're like right here. And it's much easier to learn than, well, it's simpler to learn than the under the jaw anchor. If you want to learn the under the jaw anchor, I'd recommend getting, say, a one-on-one private lesson, or for 5 or 10 minutes with a coach. So, good question. Thank you. Yes.
I like to add the scores in my head instead of waiting to add up the scores on the score sheet after each end of the shootings. But I keep getting frustrated with my scores and adjusting my stance for every shot. Do you have any recommendations?
How long have you been shooting?
Just a few times.
Okay. That's a really good question. Stop adding up the scores while you're shooting. Because what you're doing is you're back here, you're pulling a string, you're letting go, and you're standing there and you're just trying to add stuff up.
Right.
Well, that's actually putting your brain over thinking about numbers. Our brains actually work in color. So what you actually want to do instead is imagine the color yellow, because that's the center of the target. And when you actually do the scoring, is you want to do it when you're actually up at the target. And that's the only time. So when you're back here, if you find yourself going, oh, what was that? Like every time you're
Right.
shooting, instead take a deep breath and think about your form and say what part of your form you want to work on or do correctly on your next shot. So good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm a new archer and I'm having a hard time pulling the string back to my anchor, and my groups are not all that good either.
Oh, that's, yeah, you're thinking maybe your bow's too heavy?
Could
Yeah,
be.
that's probably what's happening. Is you want to be able to pull the string all the way back to your anchor without any strain. So if it's not coming all the way back, then you don't really have a place for your hand to go. So let's say you pull the string back and you're like here. The next time you pull back, you're over here. Next time you're here. Well, the arrows are going to go there, 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 and there. So you want to be able to come all the way back to your smile. So you're just like that. And so when you do that, you'll have consistency for every time you come back to your smile. And by the way, your face right here is extremely sensitive. So you'll feel your finger right here. If you're having trouble pulling it all the way back, what you probably also want to do is consider going to a lighter bow so that you can pull the string all the way back. Very good question. Thank you, Sally.
I'm new to archery, and my instructor taught me to bring the arrow back to just under my eye, but I don't like things under my eye or close to my eye.
Oh, me neither. Yeah. So let me just put my bow down. I'll show you something. The back of the arrow has this thing on it. I don't know if you can see it. It's white. It's called a knock. It's actually glued onto the shaft of the arrow. So since it's glued on, it can unglue itself and come off. So if it's right underneath your eye, you pull back the string, you're like right here. Well, if the back of the arrow, the knock, were to come off, it could actually go into your eye. So it is much, it's probably safer, probably better to have an anchor that's right at your smile. So that's, very good question. And there are archers that do actually shoot like this, and that's okay, but I would recommend going to the smile.
Thank
Yes. Yes, Brian.
Yeah, in the beginning, of being a new student, my instructor taught me to put one finger above the arrow and 2 fingers below the arrow. Well, my fingers are on the string, but I don't know why the arrow keeps on coming off the arrow rest.
What you're probably doing is pinching the arrow. So you're like here, and the arrow is straight on the bow, but you pull back and it's going off this way. So what I would recommend is maybe for just since you're starting out, is take your 3 fingers and put them actually underneath instead of like this. And that will prevent the pinching. And then probably after a couple of lessons, do the 1 finger above and 2 fingers below. It's going to change actually your aim point for the arrow because it changes the angle of where the arrow is going. So I'd say actually stay pretty consistent with 3 fingers under the arrow for a little while. Okay, I have time for one more question.
What's the difference between a compound bow and a recurve, and does it matter which one?
Could everybody hear him? What's the difference between a compound bow and a recurve bow? Well, I just happen to have both here. Would you like to stand up? Come on over.
Sure.
Okay, this is a recurve bow. You can hold it. If you see everybody here, there's a curve and a curve down there. So in hence it's called a recurve bow.
Okay. That makes sense.
You can hold on to that.
Okay.
Well, actually, here, I'll let you hold on to this one. Okay, that's a scary looking bow. This is a compound bow. And what it has wheels up here and wheels down there. And that's the difference between the two. So when you draw back this bow, down, because this one's really heavy, once you get back to your smile, it'll actually let off to a lighter weight. With the recurve bow, the bow that's behind him, it consistently gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and there's no let off. So that's basically the difference. And your other question was, which is better to shoot? They're both an object with a string, and you put an arrow in and you can shoot. Most hunters prefer to use a compound bow because they can actually hold the bow for longer because there's this let off once they get to their smile, and so the weight of the bow is lighter. In hunting you need to have a pretty heavy weight bow to be able to shoot. So really good question. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah, let's
it.
give him an applause. So, this was really exciting. I want to thank everybody for your absolutely wonderful questions. This has been a wonderful forum here, and I really look forward to working with you all one-on-one or as a group later on, actually out at the archery range. So, thank you.